Good morning. You are watching Mornings on ABC News 24. We're just going to break into our scheduled program because we're taking you now to Canberra for a press conference with the Greens.
Last year, the government claimed that they needed to cut single-parent payments by up to $60 to $120 a week so that they could find a surplus. They've abandoned the surplus, but they've also abandoned single parents and those trying to struggle to survive on Newstart. The government is simply trying to cover up the fact that they are not helping those struggling more than $130 a week below the poverty line. The government's increase, so-called increase, to the income-free area gives people an extra $19 a week. That's basically another hour's work. This does not address the significant issues that people face trying to struggle to survive on Newstart. They're also returning people's access to the pensioner concession card, but not until next year, March next year. People are going to be allowed to, additional people are going to be able to access their education supplement. That does nothing for those single parents that have already lost access to that pensioner concession payments and are now have been forced to give up study for this year. Again, they can't access it until March next year. This is a government abandoning the most vulnerable members of our community and making them pay for the fact that they won't stand up to the mining industry and raise the revenue that's needed to help the most vulnerable members of our community. This is not going to deliver the changes that people on Newstart and single parents face. When single parents were transferred from parenting payment single onto Newstart, they moved from an income-free area of over $176 a fortnight down to the Newstart level. The government's now saying they'll raise that to $100. This does not account for and does not make up the vast amount of money that single parents lost when they were transferred to Newstart from parenting payment single, and it does not address the significant barriers that those on Newstart face, both trying to live on Newstart itself, more than $130 below the poverty line, but also we know that the long-term unemployed face significant barriers to finding work. And until we address properly those barriers to work, you can do all you like by raising the income-free area, but those barriers continue to exist and we need to address those barriers, which means fixing the employment services program, which has not yet been fixed.
Labor Senator Doug Cameron recently said that a lot of politicians were numb to the issue of poverty. Do you agree with that assessment?
I think that politicians really need to get out and visit people and spend time with people trying to struggle on Newstart, to learn the difficulties they face every single day. I'd also encourage people to be going and visiting emergency relief centres to both talk to the staff that are working on those centres that will tell you the accounts they hear day in, day out, and also you meet people that are there also struggling on parenting payment single, on Newstart, and in fact on disability support pensions as well, trying to make ends meet because it is impossible to survive on the low payments of Newstart.
As you said, this is only worth about an extra hour's worth of work a week, a fortnight. Do you think the work test would have been better off increasing it higher, so maybe you could have earned like $100 before losing?
I think that what they really need to do is raise the basic level of Newstart, which is the $50 a week, which takes it somewhere nearer addressing the issues of the difference between that and the poverty line, but also, of course, the difference between that and the age pension. We know it's difficult to survive on the age pension, but what we're doing is asking or requiring and forcing those receiving Newstart payments, over 62% are on there longer than a year, to exist on greater than $130 below both the age pension and the poverty line. While I'm here, I'd also like to make a quick comment on the NDIS and Western Australia. Western Australia is now the only state, my home state, I'm ashamed to say, that has not signed up to NDIS. The West Australian Premier is playing politics with the NDIS and the lives of people trying to those struggling with a disability and trying to struggle to get the adequate care and support. I'll be the first to say that Western Australia has done a better job supporting those with a disability in Australia. But when you've got such a low base as we have had in Australia, being better than the other states is not necessarily a great big star that you should be hanging on to. There is a huge level of unmet need for those living with a disability in Western Australia. It is not beyond the wit of our Premier, surely, and the West Australian Government to be able to negotiate a good outcome with the federal government for those living with a disability. And the first step there is to get over his fixation with Western Australia states' rights issues and to come on board with an NDIS so that the people living with a disability in Western Australia have access to the same systems and levels of supports that all the rest of Australia will enjoy. When I was the Deputy Chair of the Senate inquiry into this legislation, and one question that I asked a number of times around Australia, but particularly in my home state of Western Australia, is to people with a disability, do you want Western Australia to sign up? They said yes. Do they want the NDIS to go ahead as soon as possible? They said yes. I urge our the Premier of Western Australia to listen to those living with a disability and to come on board with the NDIS.
So you don't buy his argument that the quality of care could, I guess, go down?
No, but the Premier made that statement in Parliament, I noticed, that said that he implied that some people receiving supports will, in fact, lose those supports. If you carefully read the legislation, but also the evidence to the Senate inquiry, you'll see that there was a commitment that people would not go backwards in their level of care. In other words, if you already have access care and support as a disability support, you will maintain that. That's not to say that you can't change it, because of course we're all hoping that the care will be much better and you get much wider choice. So people will be able to choose different care, but they will maintain a level of care, because that was a commitment that was given when during the debate, and also it's actually in the legislation.
What about his argument that people in sort of like eastern states bureaucracies aren't well placed to make decisions about what people in Perth or Bunbury or wherever need?
It's quite frankly it's not really a different argument to the arguments that you heard from Victoria and Queensland, South Australia and Tasmania. All the jurisdictions think that they're special and that they do something different. Yes, they do. The idea is that we get a national set of standards, and that we try and... The idea here is that people actually make their own decisions about care, which is what CDC is all about. It's self-directed care. So the idea is for people to be able to making that decisions themselves. I think that, yes, it's important that we get local characteristics into decision making, and that's one of the reasons that we've got launch sites, because this hasn't been done in Australia before. So making sure the launch sites work well, make sure they're monitored properly and that they're a very good learning exercise will make sure that we actually get a really good system here in Australia. We in WA can learn that just as much as any other jurisdiction.
Thanks, Senator.
Thank you. I think Senator Rhiannon's coming up as well.
Yep.
You've been listening to West Australian Greens Senator Rachel Siewert speaking in Canberra. As she just mentioned there, we are expecting her colleague Lee Rhiannon to also step up and speak to the media. Rachel Siewert, they're speaking about, making a call for the government to raise the basic level of Newstart, and also having a go at her own WA State Premier, Colin Barnett, for failing to sign up to the NDIS. WA, the only state not to sign up to the NDIS.